This is Mrs. Charlotte Telford, sir. She's the lady who found the body." A highly distressed, short and tubby lady was twisting her hands together at the start of the walking track out of the village. Peregrine introduced himself, and the team then got down to business. "Where exactly is the body, Mrs. Telford?" She pointed down the track. "Out there, near the river mouth. It's my first morning in the village. My new neighbour told me about this lovely track, so I was out walking Hamish, came round the corner by the river, and there he was, just lying there. Well, I thought he was a drunk, what with him having no clothes on and all, so I kept my distance. But Hamish insisted on going for a closer look and wouldn't listen to me, so I had to go in myself, like, frightened to death I was, in case he was some kind of loony." The words streamed out of her, seemingly without end, and Peregrine seized the brief pause to ask a question. "Hamish?" "Hamish is her dog, sir," said Tony. "A wire-haired terrier, I believe." "That's right, love, a lovely wire-haired terrier. Poor little bleeder, he never asked to see no dead body. He's been quite beside himself ever since, jumping around, wanting to play. I said to him, 'Hamish, you just quiet down.' But he wouldn't, Inspector. I had to grab him by the collar to drag him off and use his lead until I was right round the corner coming back here to call you, which I did as soon as I got home after I spoke to Mrs. Baker next door on account of her telling me about the track and all. She said, 'Call the police, love,' and I said to her, 'That's just what I'm going to do.'" She paused for breath. "And that's what I did do and all." She looked at him for approval. Peregrine felt slightly battered by her onslaught, but managed to congratulate her. "Excellent, Mrs. Telford. You did exactly the right thing." Behind her, Tony was grinning like a loon. He'd had the pleasure of her company for a full quarter of an hour before Peregrine had arrived, and was glad to see someone else in the firing line. Peregrine looked at him pointedly. "Well, Mrs. Telford, could you lead Tony here down the track to where you found the body? Felicity and I will follow behind with the rest of the team. Can you stay off the track itself, though, in case you destroy any evidence?" Tony's jaw dropped in disbelief, but he caught himself before she turned around to face him. "I will so, Inspector. Come along, young man, you'll have to mind your feet. It gets a bit uneven and rocky here and there, and Mrs. Baker says the wind can kick the dust into your eyes something terrible. But that's not so bad, I says to myself. I can just wrap my hanky round my nose if it gets too bad, which it hasn't this morning. I'm only saying in case it does, you understand. Have you been a policeman very long? You look so young to be a policeman, but then I suppose getting older, that's that to a person like me. Everyone seems young after a point. You wait, young sir, it'll happen to you too. Just mark my words." Peregrine gave the pair of them a head start, waiting until the constant stream of noise abated to a tolerable level. Then with a huge grin he turned to the rest of the team. "Now listen up, you lot. Be very careful where you put your feet. We have no idea about entry and exit paths for this, and we don't want to disturb things any more than necessary. Keep in a single file behind me as much as possible, in the grass here off the track itself. Tommy and Sandra, can you please stay here and stop any curious locals coming down here after us?" The last remark was directed to the two uniformed officers, who nodded their understanding. "And Bert," he said to a third uniformed officer, "you come along with us." A pleased Bert stepped up smartly. "Yes, sir." "Excellent. I'll need somebody to bring Mrs. Telford back once she's led us to the body." Peregrine grinned at the suddenly dismayed face of the young officer. "Cheer up, lad. Into each life some rain must fall." Contrary to Mrs. Telford's dire warnings to Tony, the grass was easy underfoot, with only the odd rock here and there to disturb the even tenor of the walk. The Gelt river mouth was about 40 feet wide from side to side. Peregrine stopped and looked intently at the strip where the current of the river and the waves of the sea fought for supremacy. The water there was not only choppy, but dirty, filled with a mixture of detritus brought down by the river and the flotsam of the sea. "We might need to come back and look at that, folks," he said to the others. "Mrs. Telford said he was naked, and if he is, where are his clothes? Out there, perhaps. Who fancies a swim?" The rest of them looked back at him, stony-faced. "Oh, the youth of today," he said sadly. Then he grinned. "Come on, let's see where they've got to." He'd allowed Tony to get a good 100 yards ahead by this time, but he and Mrs. Telford had come to a halt, and her interminable chatter was once more coming through loud and clear. "You see, it's just like I said. There he is, all naked with no clothes on, and my goodness, even a married woman like myself has no place to look, except for the fact he's all on his side there, which is pretty modest. But I told myself, 'Charlotte, my girl, you just don't stand over there or you'll get a right eyeful.' And do you know, young man, I did. Shocking."